The first flight will leave in 10 to 12 weeks, and these flights will go come what may. No foreign court will stop us from getting flights off.
Rishi Sunak's statement is more than just a threat, and here's why.
Last night, Madam Deputy Speaker, we aimed to relocate the first people from our country who arrived here through dangerous and illegal means, including by small boat.
These dramatic moments are part of a larger strategy that's sparking major conversations across the UK. How will these actions shape the future of immigration in the UK?
My policy is very simple. It is this country and your government who should decide who comes here, and not criminal gangs. Now, the first step is understanding the nature and scale of what we are dealing with. The number of people entering the UK illegally in small boats has more than quadrupled in just the last 2 years. Those illegally crossing the Channel are not directly fleeing a war-torn country, or persecution, or an imminent threat to life. They have travelled through safe European countries. They are paying people smugglers huge sums to make this dangerous and sometimes tragic journey. Now, the reason that criminal gangs continue to bring small boats over here is because they know that our system can be exploited. That once here, illegal migrants can make a multitude of asylum, modern slavery, and spurious human rights claims to frustrate their removal. And the risk remains that those individuals just disappear into the black economy. Now, that is the reality we must deal with. And with 100 million people displaced around the world, if we do not deal with it now, the situation will just get worse and worse. People must know that if they come here illegally, it will result in their detention and swift removal. Once this happens, and they know it will happen, they will not come and the boats will stop. That is why today we are introducing legislation to make clear that if you come here illegally, you can't claim asylum, you can't benefit from our modern slavery protections, you can't make spurious human rights claims, and you can't stay. We will detain those who come here illegally and then remove them in weeks, either to their own country if it is safe to do so, or to a safe third country like Rwanda.
The recent enforcement of UK deportation flights marks a significant step in the government's crackdown on illegal immigration, aiming to deter dangerous channel crossings. However, critics argued that this approach might overlook the complexities of the asylum process and the humanitarian needs of genuine refugees, potentially leading to unintended ethical and economic consequences.
Immigration. Yeah.
And once you are removed, you will be banned, as you are in America and Australia, from ever re-entering our country. This is how we will break the business model of the people smugglers. And this is how we will take back control of our borders. Now, this bill provides the legal framework needed to deliver this in a way that no other legislation has done before. This is tough, but it is necessary and it is fair. And this legislation will be retrospective. If you come on a small boat today, the measures in this bill will apply to you. And this is just part of what we are doing. I've always been clear that this is a complex problem that can't be solved overnight and will require us to use every tool at our disposal. That is why I've already secured the largest ever small boats deal with France, and patrols on French beaches are already up 40%. I also promised progress on enforcement, and we've increased raids on illegal working by 50%. I've also negotiated a new deal with Albania, which accounted for a third of all small boats arrivals, and that's already delivering. We've returned 500 illegal migrants to Albania, and we are seeing far fewer come as a result. This shows that there is nothing inevitable about illegal migration. Deterrence works, and with will and determination, the government can get on top of it, and we will. Now, this will always be a compassionate and generous country. It is something that we're all rightly proud of. Just look at how we've welcomed Ukrainians and Syrians from refugee camps and embraced Hong Kongers fleeing the Chinese clampdown. But the current situation is neither moral nor sustainable. It cannot go on. It's completely unfair on the British people who have opened their homes to genuine refugees, but are now having to spend nearly £6 million a day to put up illegal migrants in hotels.
The UK deportation flight signals a sharp shift in the government's crackdown on illegal immigration, signaling a no-nonsense approach to border control. While this bold move aims to dismantle the people smugglers' operations, it also stirs debate about potential legal hurdles and the humanitarian implications, adding a layer of entry to the unfolding immigration saga. The implications of this decisive action are vast, potentially reshaping the landscape of UK immigration policy and enforcement. However, it raises questions about the balance between stringent border control and ethical treatment of asylum seekers, which could lead to significant legal and humanitarian challenges.
It's unfair on the people who come to this country legally to see others skipping the queue. And it's devastatingly unfair on those who most need our help but can't get it, as our asylum system is being overwhelmed by those travelling illegally across the channel. If we can't stop the boats, our ability to help genuine refugees in future will be constrained. Full control of our borders will allow us to decide who to help and to provide safe and legal routes for those most in need. Now, I understand there will be debate about the toughness of these measures. All I can say is, we have tried it every other way and it has not worked. So I say again, my policy is very simple. It is this country and your government who should decide who comes here, not criminal gangs. And I will do whatever is necessary to achieve that. Thank you. But we'll take some questions from the media. If we could start with the BBC.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Chris Mason, BBC News. If by the time of the next general election you haven't stopped the boats, will you have failed?
Thanks, Chris. So look, I wouldn't be standing here if I didn't think that I could deliver on this promise. At the beginning of the year, I stood up in front of the British people, made 5 promises, and one of them was to stop the boats. And since I've had this job, I've spent a lot of time thinking long and hard about how to solve this problem. And I'm confident that the bill we're introducing today will help us do that. It will mean that for the first time, we will have a system whereby if people come here illegally, they won't be able to stay, they'll be detained and they'll be swiftly removed. And as we deliver on that, people will see that there is no point in coming here. We will have that deterrence effect. But I've also been clear throughout that this is a complicated problem, right? There is no one silver bullet. And the legislation, of course, it's really important, and that's why today is important, but it's just one of the many things we're doing. We need to cooperate with our allies, particularly the French, which is why the deal that the Home Secretary and I worked on at the end of last year is so important, and we hope to continue deepening and strengthening our cooperation with the French and other European allies. It's why the deal we announced with Albania is so important. And I think let's just pause on that for a second. Albania accounted for around a third of our illegal migrants last year. But because of the steps that we've put in place, the new deal that we've announced, what we're seeing now is that we're returning hundreds of people back to Albania, and we're seeing the numbers come down considerably.
Last night, Madam Deputy Speaker, we aimed to relocate the first people from our country who arrived here through dangerous and illegal means, including by small boat. Over the course of this week, many and various claims to prevent relocation have been brought forward. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome the decisions of our domestic courts, the High Court, the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court to uphold our right to send the flight. However, following a decision by an out-of-hours judge in the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, minutes before our flight's departure, the final individuals remaining on the flight had their removal directions paused while their claims were considered. I want to make something absolutely clear today, Madam Deputy Speaker. The European Court of Human Rights did not rule that the policy or relocations were unlawful, but they prohibited the removal of 3 of those on last night's flight. Those prohibitions last for different time periods, but are not an absolute bar on their transfer to Rwanda. Anyone who's been ordered to be released by the courts will be tagged while we continue to progress their relocation. While this decision by the Strasbourg Court to intervene was disappointing and surprising given the repeated and considered judgments to the contrary in our domestic courts, we remain committed to this policy. These repeated legal barriers are, Madam Deputy Speaker, very similar to those that we experience with all other removal flights, and we believe that we are fully compliant with our domestic and international obligations, and preparations for our future flights and the next flights have already begun. Our domestic courts were of the view that the flight could go ahead. Madam Deputy Speaker, the case for our partnership with Rwanda bears repeating. We are a generous and welcoming country, as has been shown time and time again.
These deportation flights herald a new era in immigration enforcement, akin to a seismic shift in the nation's approach to border control as the government navigates this uncharted territory. The ripple effect on international relations and the ethical landscape remain to be seen, creating an intricate dance between deterrence and compassion. With officers intensifying the clampdown on illegal immigrants and the PM's fierce stance against it, the UK is poised for multiple deportation flights. In the coming weeks, the big question remains, will these bold measures significantly curb the influx of illegal immigrants, or they spark new challenges on the horizon?
It shows to me that if we get this right, it will make a difference. Now, we're in the early stages of it, but we've given it long, hard thought. And, I said at the beginning of the year that, I only promise what I believe I can deliver, and I will absolutely deliver on what I promise, and that's what we're going to do today. Yeah, but all of these things play their part. It's that no one thing is the answer to this question, right? And that is the point. The legislation is absolutely critical. There is no way to stop the boats without this legislation. But this legislation on its own won't do it. That's why we need all the other things that I've talked about as well. All of those things will help us achieve that goal of stopping the boats. But as I said, I promise I promise what I can deliver, and I will deliver what I promise. And that's what we said we would do. That's what we will do. Right, next we've got ITV.
Prime Minister, you talked about the importance of swift removal. More than 2/3 of asylum seekers don't come from Albania. How is it compatible with the British traditions of humanity and compassion that you are criminalising, incarcerating, potentially forcing statelessness, homelessness, destitution on asylum seekers, many of whom are, as you accept, vulnerable and traumatised, before you have in place agreements with third countries to which you could move in a swift way, in your words, those asylum seekers?
This is a country that has always been open, welcoming, compassionate and generous to those in need. Just in the last few years, since 2015, we've welcomed almost 500,000 people to this country. 500,000 from Ukraine, from Syria, from Afghanistan, from Hong Kong. That's our record, that's our compassion. And everyone should be incredibly proud of that. I am. But what is not compassionate is to allow the current situation to persist. There is nothing compassionate about allowing vulnerable people to perish in the Channel. We had a stark reminder of that just a few weeks ago off the coast of Italy when over 50 people died, including children. Right? People being exploited by criminal gangs and smugglers. I was just at Dover earlier today talking to the teams that have to deal with this on the ground, as the Home Secretary and the Immigration Minister see almost every week. Right? There's nothing compassionate about that situation persisting, and there's nothing compassionate or fair about us not being able to help the truly most vulnerable people around the world, because our system is being overwhelmed by those who are jumping the queue and coming here illegally.
Thanks for watching, and for more videos, please subscribe and press the bell icon.